Hello and welcome to Yesterday's Airlines, and a happy new year from myself to everyone who watches and reads my material. Thank you very much. It has been another very successful year at Yesterday's Airlines in 2024. In fact, it is the 10th year of Yesterday's Airlines, and I celebrated that anniversary in November. So thank you to everyone who has helped make the channel and the website what they are today. Now, in this video, we're going to take a look at what I think are the top 12 models of 2024. And I know that's insanely subjective. So I'm trying to pick models which mean something to the scale in the year and I think have been carried off really well. 2024 has been an outstanding year for 400 scale in terms of the volume of models produced, if not always in terms of the quality and the diversity. And I have covered off my review of the year at yesterdaysairlines.com just last week. So if you haven't looked through my review of 2024, which goes through all of the brands, who they are, what they made, and what kind of aircraft are being produced, then get over to yesterdaysairlines.com now and have a look at that. But in this video, we're going to pick out 12 of the models that I've bought this year and take a closer look and see what they mean for the scale. Now, in terms of my collecting, personally, it's been a bumper year for me at Yesterday's Airlines, and I have purchased 175 models that were made in 2024. That's slightly less than I purchased in 2023, but it's always the case that, I end up picking up some models in the next year. So I ended up buying 181 models from 2023. This is obviously getting well out of hand, my purchasing. But as you can see from this table, I buy from pretty much all of the brands that exist in 400 scale. Everybody makes something that I am interested in. Now, as you can see, in terms of the brands that I'm buying from, the most important brands for me are NG models, Panda models, and Aero Classics. And that's just because of the models they're making. NG, even though they've not had a spectacular year, is still producing a large number of quality Chinese airliners, if not necessarily the sort of diversity of non-Chinese airliners that I'd like. Aero Classics make an exceptional range of classic stuff, even though not always particularly high quality. Panda Models has been producing a really interesting set of models for itself and a whole range of other brands and retailers, and you quite often get some really cool models out of Panda. So those are my three biggest collector brands, but you can also see that I'm buying a decent number of models from other brands as well. Aviation 400 feature reasonably highly. I'm really liking a lot of their models, especially the A380s. Phoenix have done exceptionally well in the last couple of years, and that has been reflected in me buying a lot more Phoenix models than I had done. And I buy a lot of models from the smaller brands as well. So there's a good range of models that I'm buying from across the manufacturers. That means that it's really hard to pick out 12 which are the top. But that's what I'll try and do in this video. Now, before I get into my top 12, don't forget to chuck a like on the video if you're enjoying it. Subscribe to the channel because I've always got loads of new material coming up. I review releases each month and check out what is going on in the scale across my social media channels. So don't forget to subscribe and also to follow me at Yester Airlines on Instagram and Facebook. And once again, of course, this all began with yesterdaysairlines.com, the website, and that still remains the center of the work that I'm doing in 400 scale. So once again, thank you very much for watching and commenting and reading, and I really appreciate that. But let's get on and see what I think are the top 12 models of 2024. Okay, so I'm not ordering these in terms of which one's better than the others. I think that's impossible to do. I'm just going to go through the models in the order that they were produced in 2024. So the month that they were announced, not necessarily the month they ended up being released, but the month that they were announced in the scale. And first up, we're going to a brand which I admit is not my favorite, and that is Gemini jets. And the first model I'm picking is the KLM City Hopper Embraer E195E2 PHNXE, a model which was from all the way back in January, and a model which turned out superbly well. I have to say I really like this new Embraer E2 mould. It's an illustration of a more interesting and unusual types, not all just Boeing and Airbuses, for the most modern aircraft, and the mould came out looking superb. It's a really nice little model. I would like to see more of this sort of thing from Gemini personally. I think a lot of their material is pretty boring and often not using the best products on the market either. But this model really stood out for me as being a nice little release from them. Model number 2 comes from a brand that didn't feature at all in my top, and I did top 15 last year, my top 15 models of 2023, but is a brand which has done even better in 2024, and that is Phoenix Models. Phoenix have been a revelation in terms of the excellent increase in diversity and finding models that need to be released because they haven't been released since, say, Dragon Wings days, or have never been released, and finding those niches and producing some really beautiful models in 2024. And not only that, they've also gone in and actually looked at producing new molds, which is something which Phoenix hadn't been doing much. And the big new mold they produced this year was, of course, the Ilyushin IL96-400, which is a stretch of their Series 300 mold, and it turned out wonderfully. And I've picked up 4 or 5 of these IL96-400s this year, and the one I've chosen for this list is the Lance Sawyer's version, because I really like this scheme. It's very attractive using the colours of the Russian flag here. RA96101. It's a cool looking aircraft. This is where I just can't understand if you're just buying, say, what you see at your local airport and not buying a wider range of models. I mean, look how amazingly cool this aircraft looks, and unusual for a vaguely modern type as well. It's an exceptionally done mold, and I'm really pleased to see Phoenix taking the punt to produce something where there's only 10 or 12 liveries available to be made, but you can produce some really nice models, make yourself stand out from the crowd with some excellent releases. And that is what Phoenix have done this year. They've produced a really good range of models and produced this wonderful Ilyushin IL96-400 mold, which deserves a lot of praise. My third model of the year comes from May and is this Big Bird Mark III Pan American 707. I'm really impressed by it. Now, I've got a load of Aero Classics 707s and I really like them, but it does have the wing seam. This mould, which is the old Witty Wings AV400 mould, is better than the Aero Classics. It doesn't have that wing seam, and it does have the aerials added, and it's got some really nice detailing. It's a shame that they can only represent the 707-320B and C and not the earlier turbojet versions, but it is a really good release, and it's nice to see somebody other than Aero Classics producing some classic models. Now, this is actually the only Big Bird release I got this year, and they don't make many models under this Big Bird brand at all, but it is good to see these Witty molds are still around and still available for use. And we've just recently seen the rebirth of Apollo models using the Witty Wings A380. I'm sure we're going to see more of those Witty Wings molds in the coming year, using molds that still have a lot of quality despite their age, but haven't been seen much at all in recent times. So I'm sure we're going to see more of those, but this 707 always looks great in the Pan Am colours, and it's a really nicely finished model and goes exceptionally well with my Pan Am fleet. So really pleased for this one. Model number 4 was also announced in May, but it admittedly didn't come out till quite a bit later in the year. And this is from another brand which I'm a really big fan of. It's Aviation 400. It's the Air Tanzania 7878 5H Now, AV400 have had a good year, I think. Now, there is substantial delays around some of the models they produce, I admit, but when they do get there, I think that Aviation 400 are offering something that nobody else in the scale is. So what am I talking about with that? Well, I'm talking about the beacon lights, obviously. I'm talking about magnetic detachable landing gear, which is a pretty cool feature and works really nicely on these AV400 models, so you can display them gears up. Air Tanzania is a really cool airline. It's got this really attractive livery, and I've always got a soft spot for African flag carriers, and this one was a really great choice and the sort of model which nobody else is making. And it's nice to see AV400 get out there and produce models that are not the same as models being made by JC or NG. So I think this 7878 is a great choice, and the new 787 mold that you've got here works really nicely. The detachable gear and everything's great. Air Tanzania, awesome airline. All comes together for a really nice package. And in general, I can say that with most AV400 releases, that they compete very nicely in a subtly different space to releases by NG models or JC Wings or Gemini, or Phoenix. So it's, yeah, AV400 offering something different for collectors with these extra features. I know some people don't like them that much, but I generally think they're a plus, and they certainly give that choice, and I think that's really important for the scale. Another brand that's had an excellent 2024 has been Panda Models. And Panda has been around for a long time now, ever since like 2016 or so. And they do produce a lot of models, but quite often they don't have a lot of visibility in Western markets. But this year, Panda have been increasing their mold catalogue and started producing more wide-body molds. They've got an MD-11, they've got a 767 series, 300 and 400, I think there's a 200 coming as well, and they produced an A350-900. Now, I was a little bit at the time, do we need another A350-900? But the end result models that came out in Singapore Airlines and China Southern, both really impressive. So I've chosen the China Southern A350-900 from Panda, which is another May announcement, B32FR, as one of my 12 for this year. It is an exceptionally nice model. The A350 mold here is really nice, pretty much as good as the NG, and those are both really, really high quality A350s. And I think this illustrates where Panda are, that they've got this ability to produce models that are exceptionally high quality, up there with the best in the scale, and they are willing to work with a wide range of other brands and retailers to produce models. So this A350 China Southern, it turned out superbly nicely, and it kind of illustrates, I think, what Panda are capable of doing. Now, I've heard some rumours that maybe Panda won't have access to the A350 mold for very long, but regardless, this was a really top-class model for 2024, and I know that a lot of people really enjoy the Singapore version. So, great model from Panda here, and a brand to watch out for in the new year because they're doing some really cool things. That's model number 6 in the list here, and is the first NG models release of the year, and it is of course one of the American Airlines MD-80 releases that again come from May. In this case, I've chosen N589AA with the pointy tail cone. Now, NG have had a really subpar year, I think. Their diversity of models hasn't been great. Some of the things they've tried, like the Ultimate Collection and arguably NG Lite, haven't really landed too well. They've made some really questionable release choices, at least in my opinion. But they have produced still some amazing models, and it is so good to see new MD-80s in 400 scale. I know that there have been a few trickling out from Gemini and such this year, but they just can't compete with this new NG models mold. It is just such a shame that NG have really struggled to get their new molds in use regularly. And in fact, aside from these American Airlines versions and a couple of blanks, we've not really seen the NG MD-80 at all this year, which is a real shame. There are so many MD-80s to be made, and I've been trying my best to get people to wish on those in that Wish and Commission Centre that NG's been playing around with. Again, is that a good thing or not, the Wish and Commission Centre? I don't know. But this mold is a good thing, and these American Airlines MD-80s turned out superbly. The models look really wonderful, and they are top class, and it shows that NG models still are capable of producing some of the best, if not the best models in 400 scale, even though a lot of what they've done hasn't necessarily hit the spot for me this year. Model number 7 is a Boeing 747-400. It is made by JC Wings, but it was made for Sam Lung and a specific release for him. And it is this wonderful Air Canada 747-400 in the delivery colours CGAGM. Now, this 747 really illustrates, I think, some of the great things about JC and some of the not so great things. I really like the mould, and they seem to have largely fixed issues with the undercarriage, and this is a fabulous looking model, really beautifully done, and it's got a really nice flip top box which gives it that kind of premium feel as well. So overall, it's a spectacular release. It's a shame that JC Wings themselves didn't feel that this was a model that could be sold more widely, and it had to be made specifically for an individual seller. And that is more of an issue, that JC just don't often seem to know what to make, and they make a lot of quite boring models, you know, obscure cargo airlines and really random things. They're not random in a good way, I mean random in a really naff way. And there's a lot of repetition as well amongst their releases. But I do speak with JC quite a bit, and I'm quite excited about where they're going and what they're going to be producing in the new year. So I'm hoping that we see a lot more diversity from JC. They've got this amazing mould catalogue to use, and they can produce a lot of models nobody else can make. So I'm hoping we see more of those, and I think we will. So I'm optimistic for JC Wings. But this 747-400, and a spectacular model. It really illustrates the quality of the JC 744, and I know there are several other 747-400s in the market, and it'll be interesting to see how they compete with this one. We've got the NG version, there's an HX models version. But I really hope in 2025 we see a higher quality of 747 release, because to be honest, the 747s in 2024 have been pretty mediocre. Now, also announced in June was this Aero Classics TAM 727-200 HCBHM, and this model kind of encapsulates Aero Classics in a nutshell. AC is still a brand that I go to a lot, but the quality is often lacking. They produce this wonderful diversity of models, and they've got some decent molds, but a lot of the molds are pretty aged, and the quality control is often not there. But this TAM 727-200 or TAME 727-200 really illustrates what AC does well. It can produce more unusual airliners because their production runs are low. The juxtaposition of that, however, is that they can often sell out really quickly, and this model was quite hard to get hold of and sold out really fast. They can produce exceptional models, and I think this one turned out really, really nicely. Now, the 727-200 mold here does get a bit of stick. I personally don't have big issues with it. Yeah, I'm sure it could be better, but the finish here was really nice. If only Aero Classics could replicate this kind of quality more often. But when they hit the spot, they really still can produce, and this 727-200 was a really delightful release. My next model comes from July, and I can't imagine it's going to be one which is in a lot of people's lists. It's an Air China 737-800 in this yellow peony scheme. It's made by Panda Models for a brand called Gemini Star, and I picked this model for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because I found the name Gemini Star to be hilarious and definitely taking the piss out of Gemini jets. Secondly, because this model illustrates where the market is in 2024 and in 2025. I think that you've got this massive home Chinese market, and a lot of models are made specifically for that market. There's a whole range, I think there were 10 of these Air China Peony Gemini Star models made by Panda for Gemini Star, and they all turn out really nicely wearing these peony schemes. But it illustrates how many models now are being made for the China local market or for very specific markets. As I said earlier on, Panda produce a lot of models for individual retailers focusing on a very specific market. And that means you get a real diversity of models, but it also means that you really have to pay attention if you want to acquire those models. And annoyingly, it means that some of them are super hard to get hold of because they just don't get to a retailer anywhere near you. Nonetheless, This model turned out really nicely, as most Panda model releases do. I really love this peony scheme, and the reason that I picked this one just because it's so bright and vibrant, the yellow. Really like it. It's a great example again of what Panda are capable of producing on a really nice 737-800 mold. And when these Gemini Star Air China peonies came out, I mean, they were really models that attracted me, and I think I picked up 7 or 8 of the 10, and they're really, really nice. 3 models to go, and a second Phoenix model gets into my models of 2024, and in this case it is the Air Jamaica A340-300, which was announced in August. Another superb and colourful livery. There's a lot going on here in terms of the colours, but I really like it, and it fits wonderfully on the Phoenix A340, which is a great mould. And the Phoenix A340s have been a real highlight of the year for me. There are some produced towards the end of 2023, which probably 1 or 2 of those can maybe got on my top 15 of 2023 list, but I didn't end up picking up most of them until this year. And this year I've got quite a few of them, really attractive models: Egypt Air, Kuwait Airways, Air Lanka, Air Mauritius, and this Air Jamaica. They've all joined my collection, and they all look really, really nice. And this is exactly what I meant when I talked about Phoenix's ability to look at what's been made in 400 scale previously and say, wow, this model, in this case, was made at the turn of the century almost by Gemini and Dragon, but hasn't been made since. Those models are so out of date, and we can produce a really impressive, improved version of the model, and we don't have to, just produce A350s every week. So it's been lovely to see that Phoenix has that willingness to make these kind of really, they're not niche, but they're really excellent models that fill a niche, which has been left kind of empty. And especially considering that obviously we've got an upcoming NG models A340, which I think will be out here early in the new year. But I'm not going to be replacing these lovely Phoenix versions. They're really, really good. Another up-and-coming brand from 2024 is Patriot Models. They've caused a bit of a stir recently with some really unique and unusual release choices. And this Boeing KC-33 tanker prototype on the original 747 prototype was a real standout release. And again, hard to get hold of. And I want to thank again Bedfordshire Diecast in this case for enabling me to get this model. It's utilising the HX Models 747, and I could easily have put that into my top 12 as well, because that's also a fabulous base mould for this KC-33 to be modified from. But I felt like it, you only really can have one. So I chose the KC-33 over the standard release from HX. But, there's so much going on in this model. Not only have you got an up-and-coming brand like Patriot producing unusual models and modifying them themselves to make these unusual variants, and I know we're going to have more of this sort of thing coming from them in the new year, but we've also got HX Models in the background, a new brand that looks like it's got some real capability to produce some great new molds, and their new 747s, I really like them. So there's a lot of potential for HX in the new year, but there's also a lot of potential for brands like Patriot as well to leverage the molds that they're producing. My only reservations are that they're very Chinese focused, and so you don't tend to get models that necessarily appeal that much to Western collectors. But this model from Patriot was a superb release, really interesting. Again, it's not the sort of thing I would necessarily collect, but when you see it, you go, wow, that's so nice, you really have to get it. And it's got a great finish with a lot of extra detailing on the print work, and that additions of the boom for the refueling under the fuselage, and a great base mold for the 747, which really deserves to get a lot more usage in the new year on some 747 classics. I hope it does. I'm not sure it will, but I would love to see that. But either way, Patriot this year have really upped their game, and they're one of several brands that are kind of entering the market or growing well in the market, producing some really classy models. So well done to them, and well done to HX on this 747 because it's super nice. And together they make a really nice model. And possibly if I was going to pick one of the models out of these 12 to be the model of the year, it probably would be this one for the reasons that I mentioned. Okay, and my last model of the year is a September announcement. And this one, once again, is from NG Models. And it is one of the many Sichuan Airlines A350-900s in Pandaroot colours. In this case, B306N is the aircraft I've chosen. But I could have chosen almost any of them. NG, as I've said, have had a difficult year and have received a lot of criticism, a lot of which has been deserved. But they still are producing great models. And if you like colourful Chinese airliners, which I do, then there's a lot to choose from. Now, the reason that I've been able to buy so many NG this year still is because they are making a lot of good Chinese airliners. And I could have picked one of, quite a few really attractive releases that NG have made for Chinese carriers. They made some really nice China Southern specials. They made a great Capital Airlines A321. Again, lots of special schemes, and China does special schemes better than any other country on the planet. And I really like these Pandaroot A350s. This is a combination of one of the best molds in 400 scale in terms of this A350-900, a really excellent livery, and a huge amount of detail, all packed into a model which most people look at, guys, fairly ordinary, fairly standard, but it's really stands out as an excellently crafted release. And NG still have that capability. It's just such a shame that they don't necessarily deliver it on many TriStars or 757-200s or such anymore, and a lot of their releases are aimed at this. And I should mention here that obviously NG had that let classic be classic idea, and that was obviously mistranslated, and really what they meant was producing classic Chinese airliners, not classic retro Western airliners. So that's a shame, but there's a lot of hope, a lot of potential for NG in 2025. As I said earlier, they've got that Wishing Commission Centre. Hopefully that will see some more diverse models being made. But they still got it. And these models, fairly standard for NG, turn out wonderfully. Even though they've got seemingly quite a lot of problems, they're still producing arguably the best models in the scale. So, not a great year for NG, but this is a great model, and it rounds off my top 12 for 2024. So those are my top 12 models for 2024. As I said, they're not necessarily the 12 best models of the year, but there are 12 models that represent really good quality from 400 scale, and they've each got a story to tell in terms of the brand that's making them and the mold that's being used. And they illustrate, I think, that there's a lot going on in 400 scale, more than ever, and that's going to continue into 2025. The models are getting better, the quality, the diversity, the ability of brands to make unique aircraft is there more than ever. And then, of course, you've got 3D printing coming alongside the die cast as well, and getting year on year progressively much better. So there's definitely stuff to be watching out for in that space as well. It's a great time to be collecting 400 scale models, and I will keep on at Yesterday's Airlines trying to tell you guys about that, everything that's going on in 2025. So once again, thank you very much for watching my content, and a happy new year to everyone. I'll see you again soon, but that's it for now. Goodbye.